like to welcome you to Topics in Focus. In this program, we examine topics that are found on standardized English language test. Today, we are talking about expressing preferences. And our topic today is, some people prefer to live in a small town. Other people prefer to live in a big city. Where would you prefer to live? In a small town or in a big city? We may find a topic like this one on a writing test or even on a speaking test, a topic that is asking us to express our preference. If we do, there is a simple strategy to follow. Number 1, state your preference. Number 2, support your preference by using examples, details, or reasons. And number 3, restate your topic. Everyone has their own preferences, their likes and their dislikes. If you were to answer this question on a test, how would you answer it? We have been talking in this lesson about expressing preference and asking the question, some people prefer to live in a big city and some people prefer to live in a small town. Which place would you prefer to live? I have asked my wife to come and join us today in the studios. And I want to ask her the same question. If you had the choice, where would you prefer to live? In a big city or in a small town?
I would prefer a small town. There are some advantages to a small community. I like to know people. I like to know my neighbors. I like to know the people who own the stores in the community. I like to know the parents of my children's friends, and I like to know my children's friends and the places they are going to. So a smaller community, you know, you get to know the people more, you have a more sense of community, and I think it's a safer environment to be in a smaller town.
So you like the smaller community because it has that friendship, that how can we say it, that community, a sense of community.
Yes, community, family, you know, extended family. You know, it may not be your immediate family, but friends and people in the community many times become closer than even family members because you get to know them on a daily basis.
But are we saying that people in a large city have a difficult time establishing that sense of community?
I think probably a little bit more because there's so many people, and so you don't get to know them as well. People are busy. People are busy in the cities more. I think they are. But there are advantages to the city. The city has mass transportation usually, you know, big busing or subways or trains that people can get to work a little bit easier than if you're in a smaller community, especially if you have to drive any distance. You have to have a vehicle to drive then.
Well, let me ask you this. Is work easier to find in a bigger city or in a smaller town?
In a larger city.
Yeah, so people normally go to the big city to find work?
I would think so. I know my children chose, once they grew up, to move to a bigger city because of work. You know, it is easier to find work there. And it's easier to get to. You know, if their car breaks down, they have transportation to get to work.
What about the safety issue? Is it safer to live, or is it safer in a smaller town, or is it safer in a bigger city where there's a lot of people?
I think it's safer in a smaller town, probably because you know so many more people, and people are kind of watching over each other. Your neighbors kind of watch out when you go on vacation. They kind of watch your home for you and your pets and notice anything. We're in a larger city. People aren't always home, and they're not always so friendly. And, you know, just more people to I don't know, to deal with, I
to
guess
deal
you
with,
could
yeah,
say.
okay, okay. And I think in a larger city, there's, like you mentioned, there's more things to do. There's places to go and places to visit, and a lot of restaurants around, and a lot of shopping. In a smaller town, there's not so much shopping, but there is shopping.
Usually there is shopping, and many times in the smaller stores, I like some of the smaller stores because they have unique things in them many times. Things you don't normally get maybe at your department stores or something like that. Something maybe a little bit more unique in a small boutique than what you would find at a larger store in the big city.
So the smaller towns have a more of a uniqueness, and the bigger cities are more commercial.
I would think so. Yes.
So why do people leave the small towns and move to the big cities?
I think there's probably many reasons. Work is probably one of them. Entertainment. Lots of restaurants. A lot of shopping, different places to shop. Maybe apartments are a little cheaper, although some large cities are very expensive to live in, you know, in the apartments and things like that.
So
they have mass transportation. So, yes.
And so how far would you be willing to commute into a big city if you live in a small town?
Well, the longest I've commuted to a bigger city for work was 1 hour, and I would say that was probably my max. I didn't even enjoy that. I would prefer a half hour, no more than a half hour. But that's not always possible if you want to live in a smaller community.
Wow. So when you commute an hour into a bigger city, was that, I mean, let's just talk about the time you commuted into the bigger city. Was that through a lot of traffic, or was that free?
Some of it closer to the smaller town, it was not a lot of traffic. But the closer I got to the larger city, there was more traffic.
The more traffic you get there, the closer you get to the bigger city, there's more traffic. And so how do you feel waiting in traffic?
Well, it's not the most fun, but you learn to deal with it.
You learn to deal with the somewhat stress sitting in traffic, and especially if it's hot. And sometimes people get angry when they sit in traffic. And so sometimes it's not a very pleasant situation. And so that's something to consider when you're thinking about moving to the big city or living in the country and commuting into the big city. Something to consider is a traffic issue on that one. But there's certain advantages of living in a small town. Advantages of community, advantages of friendly neighbors, advantages of safety. And so there's a lot of advantages living in the smaller towns, but some disadvantages as in shopping, the larger shopping, and commuting if you have to commute in, and then the safety issues as well. Oh, very good, very good. I'm glad you joined us today. In the next lesson, we'll be talking about expressing opinions. Until next time, remember, you too can speak a second language.